signs of life. Please don't tell me that the human race did not survive. There are no people in the future. There are no people. There are no people in the future. No people at all. There are no people in the future. Where did all my people go? There are no people in the future. Let me try my people call. Where are all my people? Where are all my people? I guess I'll fly away now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. Yes, it is a Monday. It is January 17th, 2022. Happy Dr. Martin Luther King Day. I'm glad to be back here this week after we had a quick no-go last week after my son came down with COVID and we're trying to rearrange everything. So sorry for that, everybody. I appreciate you being back here today. This is Raging Chicken's Out to Coop Live. I am Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. On Out to Coop Live, we talk to progressives, activists, and troublemakers of all sorts, right from our own backyards and from across the country. And on Fridays, you know it, Sean Kitchen and I break down the good, the bad, and the ugly in state and national politics. And you got to check out the Wednesday show with Cyril Michaleko. Cyril is a progressive columnist from the Bucks County Courier-Times and the Intelligencer, and he joins me to drill down into Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and international politics. You can get all our shows by subscribing to our podcast on Podbean, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can help support this show by becoming a patron for as little as $5 a month. Simply head on over to patreon.com/rcpress and choose your membership level. And you can also help out the show by heading over to our YouTube channel if you're not there already. Smash that subscribe button, like the stream, and hit that notification bell so you know every time that we go live. You can also hop on our Discord server, which is going to start getting a little more action this year, especially given that is yet another election year. And for more PA progressive talk, you can tune into the Rick Smith Show's live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern on his YouTube channel. Basically, wherever you find a stream, you will find Rick at this point. Your best bet, actually, at this point is go on over to the ricksmithshow.com for the latest across all his platforms. I mean, he got picked up at WBAI in New York, KPFK in Los Angeles, in Chicago, and Minneapolis. He's been going nuts over there. It's a phenomenal show. I'd like everybody, when I first moved to Pennsylvania, Rick was my guide. Let me tell you that. So check out the ricksmithshow.com for all the latest. And if you haven't already, you got to check out the Sisters of the Night Caucus podcast. The amazing PA women stirring the political cauldron behind this podcast rock the house. And they know where the bodies are buried. Yes, make sure to follow them on Twitter at the Night Caucus. That's at the Night Caucus on Twitter. And subscribe to their podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. And, attention gamers, while the holidays are over, look, the Game In, that's with two N's. The Game In is a Quakertown-based black family-owned gaming store that will still serve all your gaming needs. Yes, that's right. They are friends of the show, and they've got everything from retro N64s, the latest consoles, video games for all platforms, and loads of collectibles, action figures, and Funko Pops. And look, the kids get a discount for every A on their report card. Check them out on their Facebook page. Follow them on Twitter at The Game In. If you got a question about a game, looking for something hard to get, shoot them a message or drop them an email at thegameinpa@gmail.com. Check them out. They're really awesome folks. And a special shout out, as always, goes to Jonathan Mann, who wrote our intro song, There Are No People in the Future. Check out all his great stuff on his YouTube page and follow him on Twitter at SongADayman. That's with two N's. That's at SongADayman on Twitter. Well, everybody, this is a special feature. I've been thinking about this for doing this kind of thing for a while, doing this kind of roundtable discussion with folks in the community about issues that are going on kind of in our backyards. Love having kind of, folks kind of like single interviews and come on, but I think that there's, kind of a layer of folks that are doing some hard work and organizing that are out there too as well to come around just to have a kind of more open-ended discussion about what's happening in our county. Because look, Bucks County continues to be at the center of some disturbing politics. School board races in Central Bucks, Pennridge, Palisades, Pennsbury, they all made national news for like right-wing extremism, rallying against sensible COVID mitigation strategies and diversifying our curricula and inclusiveness in the classroom, or, just being, human beings, right? I mean, seriously. Now, organizers across Bucks County did amazing work on school board and municipal campaigns, but as we enter the 2022 election cycle, organizers are continuing the work of building holding power. So tonight I welcome, well, originally I should say this right off the top of the bat, we're going to have three Bucks County activists, Amy Knecht, Emily French, and Ross McLennan. But Emily's having some tech issues getting on tonight. We were totally bummed. We tried to kind of get her up and running. That's why some folks were asking the question about whether or not so let me see. Somebody said they can't hear. Is everybody hearing okay right now? Just making sure. Let me know. But anyway, she had some tech issues. She couldn't get on, so here we are. So anyways, so then here I am tonight with Amy Knecht and Ross McLennan. They have been both were very active in this past fall's school board elections. They're also active members of our Raging Chicken community. If you've been watching any of our live shows, no doubt you've come across them in the comments section. Always got great stuff to say, great questions. And Amy and Ross are coming here tonight for this little roundtable discussion about what is up with Bucks. Reflect upon this past year's election and look forward to the organizing ahead. Welcome, Amy. Welcome, Ross, to the show.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, great. So what I thought we could start off on a little bit here is that just so you kind of introduce yourselves to the folks here, instead of me droning on about kind of who you are, your background, what got you involved in politics, all that kind of stuff. Just to kind of introduce yourself, folks, and like who you are, what's your background, how'd you get involved with politics, what were you involved in this past year, so folks have an idea about where you're coming from. Amy, let's start with you.
All right, sounds good. So I haven't originally I've always had a bit of a political opinion, but I wasn't actively involved with anything. Up until the past couple of years, I think the entire Trump administration was really what started to push me over into getting a little bit more motivated to pay attention to what was going on. And then, the past couple of years with COVID and with, our new civil rights movement going on, it's been hard to ignore. Plus that I've also been in college for the past couple of years, so that's also been something that's been definitely helping me, form a better worldview and format, or an opinion, I guess, about everything that's going on.
Fantastic. And you were kind of like active in the Palisades school board race, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
I was, yeah. I was part of Jamie Davis's campaign.
Welcome, Dave. Shout out to Jamie, who I see her in the chat
Hey,
tonight.
Jamie.
Fantastic. Shout out to Cynthia, too, as well. Both up there. Fantastic. And Ross, introduce yourself to folks.
Yeah. Okay, Ross McLennan. So I'm originally from the Lehigh Valley, Bethlehem, born and raised. And my parents were both educators. Kevin, this is great. That you've come on board with this and reflecting on your own problems here with Kutztown. But Dad was a physics professor at Lehigh, and my mom was a science teacher at a small Catholic school in Bethlehem. So I was raised progressive, pretty diverse community for myself. Freedom High School was one of the first schools to bus inner city. So I'm kind of dating myself here. I graduated in mid 70s. And I've been a 10-year resident here in Bucks County. We live in Hilltown now. And so my kids went through Easton School District. That's where they went to school. And then Rebecca's here in Pennridge. Her 4 kids. And so I watched them go through Pennridge. And they all graduated, 10 years ago. And it was a different school. There's no doubt about it. Now, politically, I've always been kind of involved. Mom was the political one in the family, I would say. So I've always paid attention. I've gone out and stumped around for various different people over the years. So I've helped. School boards, I've been to Easton's many a time. Sometimes the kids are in trouble, but most of the time it's for sports or good things. Same thing here 10 years ago. You'd go to the school board meeting and, talk about the students and all the positive things they were doing. A little bit contentious when they did the Papa Yoder thing. That was kind of interesting. But what really got me was in the summer of 2018 when the Pennridge 225 group had the town hall meeting and Bill Krause stood with that T-shirt on defiantly with total arrogance looking at his own students. I had to jump in.
So we should give people a little context here. So the Pennridge 225, these are the 225 students who were basically expelled from the Pennridge school from walking out, basically in protesting gun violence, right? This is following the shootings in Florida. And, you know, students were kind of building on a kind of a national movement at that point, and were peacefully demonstrating and chose to walk out, as like thousands of students across the country did, in support of gun reform. And what Ross is saying is that, you know, this Bill Krause, right, showed up at the meeting with his T-shirt, and his T-shirt read?
It was an NRA T-shirt.
It was an NRA T-shirt.
Yep. Right on there. Yep.
And Bill Krause, he was on the school board at that point?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had no idea who this guy was. Somebody had to keep me from standing up. I mean, I couldn't believe this guy. But yep, he stood there with it, arms crossed, angry. Pictures were taken, you know, things were said about this guy. And I found out afterwards he was on the school board. I guess I probably should have known that, but, you know, and, you know, after that, I've been kind of paying attention, and it's not pretty. It's not pretty at all.
No, it's not. It's not. And I think that things have, you know, I think a lot of my experience, you know, I've had, you know, Jamie and Cynthia have been on the show before. I've had all the Pennridge United candidates that ran for school board kind of on the show. And the experience that I would hear, and from those candidates, but also from parents across kind of districts, whether it's Central Bucks, whether it was Palisades, whether it was Pennsbury, whether it was, you know, right here, good old Pennridge, that it wasn't always like this, and things have taken a big turn. And so, I mean, Amy, like, what was that kind of impetus on your end there in Palisades, kind of seeing what was happening? Was that experience ring true to you too as well, that, you know, what we're experiencing is a strong uptick in this kind of extremist kind of politics in our communities?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, I started noticing a lot of, like, I first really started noticing it on a lot of, like, just online content. We have, you know, Palisades here, we have parent pages and stuff like that, and there's a lot of community members that are on there. And especially during the other spring in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, I mean, things kind of just exploded all over the place, and divisions really started to show up, I think, up here in this community. I'm not I wasn't super involved at that point with school board stuff, or, you know, even with the schools. I had kind of taken a step back. I have 2 older children in middle school and high school, and, you know, I have a younger child, but I definitely took a step back for a few years just to kind of focus on myself and my education. So I wasn't attending PTA meetings like I used to, and I really wasn't aware of what was going on up until this point. And then all of a sudden, it got very real very fast. And I started to realize that you know, I didn't know my community as well as I thought I did.
100%. And I should say thank you, Just Community, in the chat. A little bit of a correction. Those students, Pennridge 225, they were not expelled. They were given a 2-hour Saturday morning detention. I apologize for that. I misspoke. But yes, there was a 2-hour Saturday detention, which they showed up for, right? And as they justly say in the chat, as exactly as they said, they proudly served that. And matter actually used that Saturday detention as yet another organizing opportunity, which is precisely what you want to see in organizers. It was pretty great. And then Chuck comes in and basically says that, Krause was the VP at that point. Crazy. So Ross, you already kind of mentioned this a little bit with the Bill Krause, but when we kind of saw things, I don't know. I don't want to overcharacterize it at this point. I mean, for me here in Pennridge, things seem to just go off the rails, and I could say Pennridge United candidates who were working in that school board election, and all the volunteers that came out there did freaking amazing organizing. And I know this was also true up in Palisades. This was also true in Central Bucks. But it seemed like the wave of this kind of right-wing extremism, or that's not, this right-wing extremism was kind of way out in front and kind of better organized in terms of like what it could do at this point. I mean, how does that gel with your experience?
And funded. I mean, a lot of money. it's kind of hard to compete. Although I know we did a pretty good job of fundraising for the Democrats this go round, so that was good. But geez, they were way ahead of the game, Kevin, like you said. And vote count wise, they did pretty well on the Democratic side, but the Republicans got that much more. That makes it tough. We just got to, instead of 18%, we got to, these off year elections, we got to get 30% turnout, and we'll start to win these elections. But the Republicans just come out. Wow, amazing.
I feel like that they've always been more engaged. I think that just conservative values appeals to a lot of Americans. I also think it's a very just old school class too. Like this area up here, we have a high elderly population, and they always come out to vote, no matter what election it is. And I think that up until this point, school board elections, at least up here, have been pretty bland. They most people. I wouldn't say most people. Right. A lot of people don't even know when they're happening.
Yeah. The municipal elections are just that people just don't pay attention to them. You're right. I mean, that's why the turnouts are so low. But the Republicans, they years ago decided that they wanted to start to win these small elections, and this last, the two cycles. And really, I think Pennridge was kind of ahead of the game. I think, Joan Cohen saw and reacted to what was going on. And so there's momentum, but at the same time, I absolutely definitely see the momentum and the interest in school boards. I mean, this is tremendous. People are paying attention. They're starting to see what actually happens in these meetings. You go to these meetings, and they're recorded, so you're seeing them recorded if you want. But I've been going live as much as I can, and there's a lot of people. So hopefully that interest can keep itself going and gain momentum. Try to claw back some of the values that we've lost here.
Sometimes I seriously feel like our district is in the dark ages. You're speaking about recording for meetings, and this was a thorn in my side this past week. I've been looking for information pertaining to certain board meetings, and our district's website, looking for that stuff it's not very user friendly. I mean, once you figure it out, it's not that bad, but they have transcripts that are incredibly watered down. And I was looking up some of the past contentious meetings that I actually had attended and had taken my own notes at, and then the transcript of what the school board has provided is it's subpar is what it is. And then I was looking for the files that contained the recordings, audio recordings at the very least, because they don't video record at our meetings. And then here, I guess I have to submit one of those right to know requests to try and find it, because I contacted a person in the district who helps with this stuff, and she just said that they don't have them. Yeah. So I think that there's much to be said about people paying attention, on both sides of the fence, I'm going to say at this point, because you have one side that go to these meetings, or they have people that show up at these meetings and then report back to a group. And the organization is there, and these people aren't even all affiliated with, say, the Republican Party. These could be independents or libertarians or whatever. Yeah. No. So I was just going to say, it's nice to see that, that a lot of these districts are still recording, so people can watch afterwards and you can see what's going on. We've had meetings where people don't know what happened. It's just hearsay.
Right. And I think that, what goes through my head as you're kind of listing some of these things. I mean, the kind of the organizer brain in me goes okay, here's an organizing issue. Then here's an organizing issue. Here's whether it's the videos are better transcripts or kind of access to a bunch of these kind of issues. But ultimately that comes down to, that's the issue, right? That's potential. But all that depends upon us doing the organizing work, right? I mean, all depends on what's happening on the ground. And this is really one of the reasons why I wanted to have you all on, is to kind of think through some of that stuff, I guess, or talk through some of that stuff. And, on the one hand, we see what happened. And now it thinks what's where we're talking about it in Facebook groups, that people are talking about this stuff in email chains or in actual meetings. People are talking about, well, how do we continue the organizing and how do we say build power? So,
Right.
I mean, I don't know how to start that, right? But other than saying, where are you all in that, right? Where are you all in that idea about, okay, now if we're faced with 2022, another round of elections, we're faced with, having developed really strong and powerful organizing communities, right? But it seems like we've got to take it to the next level, right? We've got to bring more people in. We've got to have organizing. And, what I always start thinking about, looking for spaces to kind of build kind of cross-county power. But that's kind of where I'm sitting from. I mean, I'm curious when you're looking forward about kind of, lessons learned and where we need to go forward, the kind of organizing that needs to take place. How are you thinking about those questions? I mean, I don't know who wants to take that one up first, but. I know, small
Ross,
question, right, Amy?
You want to go? Or? I can go. I have something on my mind.
Yeah.
So I guess, I should probably say, so one of my classes that I did last semester was an independent study, and it was based entirely on the school board elections. And it's a project that I've been working on for several months now. It's still not finished. And it's just kind of expanded. It's blown up. And, the researcher in me wants to document everything that's been going on. In the past 2 years, we're in unprecedented times, I think. We really are. I mean, there's similarities to past events, but nothing like what we're seeing at the moment in our society and in our culture. So I'm starting to establish a project, and Kevin, like what you were saying about going across county lines, is I've decided to include in this project a study of mine is Pennridge School District, Palisades, and Central Bucks, and then launching a website, here by the end of the month is my goal, and then also including other organizations, other democratic organizations, linking in with different, school board groups. Like you name it, any type of grassroots organization, and then making sure like there's a hub for everything, so you can go on and you can see what's going on in Pennridge, you can see what's going on in Central Bucks, like all in one place, because transparency I think is key in all of these situations, especially with the organization. And we haven't
absolutely.
had, I mean, at least from personal experience, the mainstream Democratic Party hasn't been much help. They've been more of a barrier, they've been more of a hindrance, and I think that's probably the biggest takeaway from this election, is that they're the people that we were hoping that we're going to be able to help out, and they turned out to be a bit more apathetic to our situation up here in Palisades. So I think we're just going to kind of circumvent them this time.
I'm in the same boat here, and there's no doubt about it. The organization that I was familiar with years ago in the Lehigh Valley anyway, and I kind of got the impression it was statewide. They were focused on their election cycle. They were focused on the larger stuff going on. They were never really that focused on the minutiae. They kind of let the details of school boards or minor elections just go.
Yeah, definitely.
Down here, it just seems worse.
Yeah.
It was impossible, even though the school board, and part of our problem here in Pennridge, and I don't know about you, Amy, but we're in two different areas. So we have the 144, the 145, the 143. We have all these different,
Districts,
areas
right?
that people, right? And so I think for the most part, when I go to the Hilltown meeting, they're really more focused on their stuff. They don't care, but they really don't pay that much attention to the school board stuff. They really don't.
Yeah, I think our Democratic presence up in this area is very lacking. It's basically non-existent. We do have a small committees. I think Springfield Township has a small Democratic committee. Don't quote me on that. But there were people that were supposed to have been helping us out with the election at voting place or voting stations and stuff like that, and they weren't there. They weren't there. And we live in a conservative stronghold, so I think that's also been hard. Plus, too, I mean, this area up here, we're not, it's more of like a semi-rural area. We're really widespread. I mean, like I think the whole Palisades school district is about 100 square miles, but people don't live really close together. So trying to get the community out and organized, it can be difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think what you mentioned about the project, Amy, with this kind of website where we have this kind of one stop where we can go and see what's happening kind of around the area. I mean, I think that kind of communication is going to be critical going forward in many ways. And I think as you were describing this, and Ross, you and I have kind of talked a little bit about this before, but one of the things when I first came to Kutztown, and everybody kept on telling me, "Oh, it's a really conservative school. You're going to have a lot of students are conservative. Everything's conservative." I kept on hearing this, right? And I'm not from Pennsylvania. I grew up in kind of like central New York and Utica, New York, right? I lived out in Ohio and Southwest Ohio. I lived down in Washington D.C. for several years, and I kind of came up here. And so my understanding of like the Lehigh Valley and the kind of surrounding areas, of course, was, historical. And I'm like, how can you tell me that everything is quote unquote just capital C conservative when this was like where the steelworkers were born? This is where Mother Jones marched the kids from Philadelphia to Long Island Resort to protest. There's these rich traditions in Pennsylvania history. And those are people's families. It's not like just historical, but that's the experience of it. And, I would expect that a lot of, and this is what I used to tell people, said, look, Utica, New York was a conservative area too. We had all this industry, but the same thing happened to us that happened to Pennsylvania, right? All the industry left. And then you have everything's left in its wake, and you have everyone basically kind of, trying to make ends meet. Anyways, long story short, the point being is that, I started teaching some classes there, and I have these students would start show up out my office hours or outside my office door and say, hey, we were talking about this, or I heard you're interested in this kind of stuff. And suddenly there's like random students showing up my office door, like saying, look, I'm really interested in this stuff, but nobody else is. And then after I start taking email addresses down, and I'm about like 10 or 20, right? I'm like, look, the problem is not that there's nobody that cares or nobody that's motivated, or nobody wants to work and do organizing. The problem is that they don't know each other, right? Mm-hmm. And so we got off and started way back then and say building out some sort of kind of communication infrastructure, but it's hard, right? And so that always sticks with me. It seems like, because I've met so many people around here that are doing like amazing work, but it seems like we don't have the structure, if you will, that we need in order to accomplish those ends, right? And I'm also reminded of a second story is that, and I've told this one on the show before. When we used to go out, there used to be this progressive summit out in Harrisburg every year, and Raging Chicken used to go out there for it. And a friend of ours who worked with some unions and worked with some kind of say Democratic operatives was, he was there, was joining us. And he said, hey, I got to go back to my apartment and grab something. Well, let's take a quick stop. You mind? I said, no, where are we going to go? He said, just come with me. And we went into these offices, right? And these were kind of the strategic offices. I'm not going to name who they were from. But they were people who worked with the Democratic Party at the state level, right? And with unions at the state level, and had this big map, right, of Pennsylvania and all the districts, right? And there were a bunch of districts that just were empty. And he said, you see all those white ones up there, those white spaces up there? So you know what those are? Said, no, so that's where the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania has determined that they're not going to put any energy in because it's not worth their time. Yeah. And that was the majority of the map. Right. And so I think that was part of a mentality. And I've been plugging this book recently on the show. It's by Adam Hilton. Right. He's got this book that just came out. It's called True Blues, The Contentious Transformation of the Democratic Party. And he talks about how Democrats, right, and like even rank and file Democrats, like we still don't understand party politics. And what I mean by that is not to say that we're dumb or something like that, but rather the Democratic Party as it stands right now is not built to do the organizing work that we do. It's really kind of contracted out all the organizing work to these subsidiary organizations, whether they're environmental organizations, labor organizations, education organizations. But the party apparatus itself is really dependent upon consultants, right, and top-down PR strategies. So it seems to me, and that's my long way around saying, it seems to me that part of what the mind shift has to happen on our end too is also thinking about the organizing that we need to do in our communities. So like Ross, you brought up that that notion that we have these several different districts, right, in one area. Well, then that points to the fact that organizing by the district, maybe that's the most effective way. Maybe we need to do it around community, right, around Pennridge.
Yeah, I want to thank Chuck for what he said here. To be fair, in Pennridge, there's a fair amount of interest in reinvigorating the 100%. Local Democratic committees. Now, that's true. And, I was frustrated, I was saying, with the process. But what I've been trying to say, and I said it in your last show, I kind of went off a little bit too much, by the way. Sorry about that. I feel very, very strongly that those Democratic committees need folks like us. And that's why I'm involved. And I realized it a couple of years ago, is that I can't walk around complaining and working for the larger state group, which is what I was doing. I worked well for Bernie and then for Hillary. And in the past, I've helped whoever with phone calls or, marching about with candidates. And I can't do that anymore. I need to get involved. And so, thank you, Chuck. That's a good point. And we are trying to cross each other's paths here. We are trying with our committees to get folks in, like myself, like Chuck. And, I've been begging to get you there, Kevin. But...
Yeah, well, like I said, it's like my up until just recently, my barrier was always one, this show, or number two was my kids. Especially during COVID, my wife works in healthcare and she works nonstop right now. Yeah,
you got us here today, so this is great. And the hope is that folks who are listening into your stuff get the idea and get involved. We got a lot of good people in these meetings. It's fun. It's for the first time in years. It's a lot of fun to go to these meetings. They're boring, but what comes out of them sometimes can be pretty, And then they have the committees, which are cool, because then the committees are the ones that do the work. And the one thing I had said, in your last show was that I personally want to walk around and get people to vote. That's what I want to do. Like, that's my job. I don't like losing. And I know the only way we can win is to get people to vote. And then I'm involved with the local committees to do that. So, I think that's where the effort has to be put, is into the local Democratic committees, get folks like, the progressives that we're talking to every day with every show that you have, and in this area and every area to get involved. So.
Yeah, Amy, what seems to be like the tenor of organizing kind of around you? Are you finding similar kind of invigoration, or invigorated organizers too as well? How is that looking from your perspective?
I think we're getting there. I think we have some people that are definitely who were involved with the elections this year, with the school board campaigns. And we all realized that there was such a lack of organization and a strong Democratic presence, even if it was small. It's not there. And I do believe that there is enough people. But like I said, it's difficult. Our area, we don't have sidewalks. We don't, you can't canvass
right.
very easily. That's one of the biggest issues that we ran into over this past election, was canvassing. And like I said, Palisades is a widespread district. The regions can be a little intimidating sometimes. I mean, you're driving back in the woods there, and there's a lot of people around here that aren't used to having somebody knock on your door.
Right.
So yeah, and that was probably, and I think, and I really was sore about this over the whole thing, was the lack of the Democrats just were not paying attention. They weren't really listening to us. They just kind of brushed it all aside, and we had to fight with them to get different forms of canvassing material and phone bank information and stuff like that. It was more of a hassle, and by the time we got everything together, we were all exhausted, right? So I think, like I said, we have motivated individuals at the moment. We do have a few things that have started already, some small groups of people. And everything, but it's hard to get off the ground.
Yeah, and I think that, when we had Diana Lagerman on the show, she ran for school board in Central Bucks, and one of the things that she said, she echoes kind of what you said about, say, the Democratic Party, like, overall is not being helpful. And she said even, in her experience too, is like coming in once they actually did all the organizing, the scrappy organizing of, putting together like an organizing committee, getting canvassing schedules out and all this kind of stuff. What happened on her end was like, you had these consultants suddenly start showing up saying like, don't talk about critical race theory. Right.
Yeah.
You got to purge that from your messaging. Don't talk about these divisive issues. Focus on your message. And she said, in her experience, was like, no, we knew, like in our gut, we talked to like after these meetings, we were just like, we need to be talking about this. We need to be contesting this stuff. But again, if you're new to this, and you've got these outside, quote unquote, experienced committee people coming in and telling you what to do. And so she said by the time that the candidates were at the point where like, forget that, that's a losing strategy. No, we need to talk about this. It was too late. I mean, and not to say that would have completely changed everything, but it's that kind of that back and forth. And let me say something too, especially for folks who are listening tonight, is that like Ross, what you said, I care about winning, right? And I am a pragmatist when it comes to power, right? And what I mean by that is like in my perfect world, I have an idea about the way politics would work, right? The kind of party organization that we would have, and all that other the kind of parties that we'd have available to us. But that's the world as it should be, not as it is. Right. So when I'm like critical of something that's happening with the Democratic Party, I'm not doing that I'm not suggesting that simply to say, therefore, Democrats suck, don't vote for Democrats. That's not the point. I think right now it's about building in those structures, but trying to find ways of doing effectively. And so that we're not kind of exhausted by just having these petty ass arguments about like, there's my daughter, kind of my censor, because because that's what I find so frustrating is you have people doing such amazing work, and when you find a structure that pushes back against you, it can be exhausting. And so in some ways, my critical lens is wanting to say, let's be aware of these things as we move forward, so we don't get bound up in them again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well put.
Yeah,
I mean, Amy, I think one question I have for you is: have you been involved more than this cycle with your local Dems, or is it just what you're seeing? Okay.
No, this has really been my first interaction with Democrats, like as a party, the Democratic Party. I've been a registered Democrat for a very long time, but I've become very disillusioned with the party. I'm not holding my breath on miracles from them, nor do I really do with a whole lot of political parties. But I do see that there is a void, and it needs to be filled, because if not, we're going to have even more these I call them like fundamentalist Republicans almost, and then uber conservatives and the alt-right just kind of moving in to fill that void very quickly because they have the organization, because they have the financiers. I mean, we didn't have a Democratic person throwing tens of thousands of dollars around this election like the Republicans did, and that's just something that's a fact that needs to be contended with.
Well, I would encourage you to get to those meetings. I try to hit all three in Pennridge if I can. There's three different Democratic groups.
Yeah.
And, it can be tiring. But the folks that I'm meeting are the folks that are going to make, like yourself. We just became Facebook friends. Thank you. So that's what's going to make the difference, is that connection. And you hit the nail, you hit the nose on the head there. That concept that you have to try to organize, that is not independent of your local Democratic group. That's what I'm trying to say. So the
Yeah.
same people that would populate your local Democratic group are the same folks that want to run, say, for the school board or maybe for some position. And just over time, like whatever club, I'm involved with all these clubs. We're all involved with these clubs and we're busy with these clubs. Well, add that club to your list. That's all I'm saying. No matter who you are. If you're a Democrat, don't complain. Add your local committee to your club list. Go in there with that attitude. Meet some good folks, and try to just have the say, so that the next great group of people to come along and say, "Hey, we need some money and some help," you're there, and you're like, "Hey, yeah, I went through that 5 years ago or 2 years ago. Stick with it."
I think definitely, and I agree with you. I think you're right, because I really think that the party just needs an infusion of new blood, of fresh ideas.
Yep.
I think they're very stagnant. So I do agree with attending. And like I said, it can be difficult. It's just there's a lot going on in everyone's lives, but I think, and like I said, there's definitely some organizing going on in the area within the small group of people that have been pushing a lot of like liberal agendas, not really agendas, just points of views, and just trying to put up a front against some of the extremism that's going on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the things is that one of the reasons we started Raging Chicken back in 2010 was because it was one of these gaps, right, that we saw that was just absent, right, and a progressive left media site, right, that was not just like a tool of a party politics or a particular organization, but that was an independent voice. And this is where Rick Smith and I first got talking back. I mean, he and I knew each other even before then, but that was the whole idea, is to build this, right? And this is like 12 years in the making to get to this point where we're having conversations about what's happening here in Bucks County, and trying to use it as a tool to help facilitate that. And when I think about back to the own organizing that I did, is because I work at Kutztown University, and I've been a labor guy for ages, right? I've been an activist. I've got my direct action civil disobedience arrests credentials that I can show. You name it, right? So. But I was so focused. I spent so much time doing organizing work within our union to try to transform our union, right, from a really a kind of a business unionism model, right, where the members are just kind of sitting back and waiting for stuff, to actually an active organizing model. And we had fits and starts in organizing over the years at Kutztown. Some major wins. I was our strike captain at Kutztown for when we went on strike in 2016. We basically had to work around our local or our statewide leadership and our local leadership to a certain degree, but our statewide leadership, in order to kind of build out connections with student organizations and mobilize kind of communities around them, because they didn't want us to be doing that. So that's where it's like so much of my energy was. And when I got burned out, right, when we had our union basically kind of go back to a much more business unionism type of model, it was exhausted and took a little break, is like right when all this stuff started kind of like happening on my end. I'm thinking like, man, I should have spent all that years organizing in my backyard instead of my workplace, I mean, but just kind of like how we come to this stuff, because that was it. And so I feel like what sucks on my end is I feel like, coming here, kind of learning these structures a little late in the game compared to like the kind of organizing I've done since I've lived in Pennsylvania, was, primarily focused on workplace and union politics, kind of statewide, as opposed to kind of really getting involved these local structures, which, I could see, the cost of that now, right? Of just trying to build out these relationships at this point, when we need it, we need it seriously, but.
Kevin, you've mentioned a few people you've had on your show. You've had a lot of attention paid to the school districts around here. So, that part of it you got right. So. Well,
no, that's the shift that I'm talking about. Is like that's saying like, look, I really need to turn the lens of the show and really become a part of a
thank
tool
you.
that can be useful for the movement, right? Because in my mind,
Mhm.
we really have to build out this organizing, and and I'm not saying this is the end all be all, but it is one structure, one component within building stuff out. Cyril's column is another one, right? The
Yeah.
Con O show when you have out there kind of in
Mhm.
Doylestown too as well, and finding ways of network these together. This way, Amy, I love this project, that you plugged earlier on. We're looking for this space where people can go.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I originally had started it just because I was having such a hard time. I have to do a paper still,
Yeah.
and I had writer's block. This is such a personal project. This is not something that I can be completely objectionable about. I am biased. I
Mhm.
participated. Um, so it's been tough to write, and I kept going off of all on these directions, different ideas. And I couldn't focus on just Palisades. I needed to expand it. So establishing, creating this website is definitely really good for like focusing as well on this and what exactly I'm trying to do. And basically it's just to tell a story of what's going on. I can't shake the feeling that Pennsylvania, that
Yeah.
Bucks County has been, ground zero for a lot of this contention, a lot of the political division, and the partisan tactics. I can't say exactly like, one thing that I think is the reason why. There's so many different things, but we have such this upheaval of militia and involvement and
Right.
activity in Pennsylvania, and then we've got all of these just anti-science people, just all these different type of pseudosciences going on. And I know it's going on nationwide, right? But I feel like here there's just been this epicenter. I think Pennsylvania's always had a very strong conservative base, and I see this national playbook just being executed like perfectly across the state. But like I said, I tried to just narrow in on one school district, and I couldn't do that. I saw the New York Times did that with their podcast, The Daily. They had featured Central Bucks, and while I thought it was great, I think that they really left out
Yes.
a lot of important facts. I think that they left out a bigger narrative, a larger narrative that includes all of Upper Bucks County and Pennsylvania, and I just wasn't happy with that, so I wanted to expand upon it.
100%, 100%. Well, I'm looking at the time here, and I mean, I seriously could talk about this stuff forever, because it's just there's just seems to be so much to unpack and go on, and it feels good to be having this conversation. But so let me ask you as a way of kind of closing things out or bringing things into a close tonight. What are some of the things that are kind of, if we've talked about a little bit of bigger picture and the organizing stuff, things that are on your radar right now, things that you think we need to be paying attention to as we move forward in 2022, or anything that you're thinking about, in this kind of movement forward, what kind of needs to be done, things that you want to plug, issues that are coming up that we need to be, paying attention to. What do you think? Ross, let me start with you.
Well, I'm focusing now on the 25th. There's a school board meeting that it's going to be pretty interesting. The big thing recently has been masks, of course. But there's been some stuff going on within the school with books and with some other, just, they're a couple weeks into this new board, and they're just pulling some stunts. I couldn't make their meeting on the, I think it was the 4th, because I was sick, and I did have COVID. So,
oh man,
one of the 20-somethings brought it around at Christmas time, so kind of went through the house. So I'm fine. I think everybody was fine, but a couple 20-somethings oddly. But that's a biggie. I mean, getting to these meetings for just the content and the ability to speak out. I try really hard, if I can, to get up there and say things without, cursing.
It's a discipline, believe me.
Oh yeah. But you see a lot of great people. I mean, I'm seeing people on the chat here that I know go to those meetings, and I'm proud of them. And so that's my number one thing right now. We just had our monthly Hilltown meeting, And we did discuss organizing a few things I'm interested in that I've been, moaning about. And Pennridge as well has their regular Democratic thing, and they just had that a week or so ago. And they're both coming out with some ideas of how to start to, my big thing is to win this election by votes. That's how we got to win. So, calling attention at the school board meetings, trying to write letters to the editor, writing into the school board, writing into your, Dr. Bolton. I'm not sure what's up with this guy lately. He's just doing what they want, I guess.
Yeah.
We're trying to do all those things and kind of throwing a lot of things out there to answer your question. But the big one is I'm focused on that next school board meeting.
Well, and I hear you. And I hear you. One of the things with Pennridge, you say about the books, they've been banning books. They've been, they've been like stripping things out of the curriculum left and right. There was this article in the Courier Times. It was a WHYY article about, this Pennridge parents are kind of filling the little libraries around town with these kind of diverse books because they're getting pulled from there, right? And
that's a great idea.
It's cool, right?
Really cool.
And at the same time, it's like okay, yeah, you know what? My concern. This is why I'm the dark cloud in every room is because I'm like, okay, people are going to read this, and the kind of right wing are going to go around to those little book stuff and take all those books, right? That's how it's going to work, right? But whatever. But then I came across almost this. This was this was, I guess, on Thursday in the Reading Eagle. Similar things are happening out there in the Kutztown school district, right? The K through 12 school district. And so out there is this great article. Teens come out and for a newly created Kutztown Banned Book Club, right? That they're meeting at the local bookstore, right? So I'm thinking,
I saw that earlier today.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking like these kind of things together, right? On the one hand, you've got this pushback, and then looking for these opportunities to organize where, hey, if they're banning it, let's form a social environment where we can talk about these things and kind of meet each other in this other kind of way. But it's cool. How about you, Amy? From where you're sitting, what's on your radar right now?
I think keeping focus on the curriculum of our schools is really important at the moment. I've been very alarmed at what I've seen in neighboring districts. We haven't really had much of an issue with some of this up here in Palisades. We're, like I said, Palisades is such a tiny, tiny little district. I feel like we get missed a lot, like on the radar. But a lot of times I feel like, too, things miss us. We don't have as many people to create a stink about things. But I definitely think that it's important, to watch that. Banning books, we've already had plenty of community members question the curriculum. People lost their heads the other year when they introduced, an elective that was on race and genocide, and people just completely were flabbergasted. They flipped out about it. So I think that's really important, is making sure, that the integrity of our education system is watched, because it's important. I think that if it's left, without anybody to be like, hey, we should not be banning books, I think that it's going to turn into that. And that's really scary for me. I'm a student of history. So, and any type of civilization, any type of society at any point in history, when you start banning information, when you start banning books, it usually doesn't lead to good things.
So 100%. I think that's absolutely clear. And I hope, and I remember, it's funny, just going back even, we moved here right before my son was born, and he's 13 now. And I remember just people talking about, we're thinking moving down to the area, and they're like, oh yeah, Pennridge School District and the Palisades School District, they're awesome schools. Or Central Bucks did these great schools. Like they had like really phenomenal reputations too as well. And I also look at this and saying, yeah, it's because this kind of nonsense wasn't going on in part. And I'm even worrying about the impact that some of these discussions are having about banning books and all this other stuff are finding their way into the classroom, where teachers are starting to worry about their jobs. Is like, God, if I bring this up and I have this conversation, and we remember Pennridge basically instructed its teachers, when J6 comes up, well, you don't really want to kind of, you don't want to talk about that. As an educator, I mean, that's like the best possible situation.
Oh my God.
Right? I mean, it's like because people are going to have perspectives all over the map, right? And the goal, from my perspective, of that's I don't know, the definition of a teachable moment, right? The opportunity to kind of flesh some of this stuff out, to hear different perspectives, and having to learn how to have that discussion when the conflicts rage so deeply, even within that classroom. I mean, for me, that's like training for democracy. And you basically said, nope, none of that. You can only do that when it's 20 years ago, right? Forget about it right now. And when it's 20 years ago, we're going to pretend that it didn't happen, so don't have to worry about even ever having the discussion at that point either. So anyways. Well, cool. Listen, I really appreciate both of y'all taking the time out of your nights to come on tonight. I know that you're all crazy busy and got lots going on. I appreciate the work that y'all are doing so much. And I hope, like, kind of down the road, whenever have you back on when things are coming back on, but also, to kind of pick your brains about other folks that we should be having on here too as well, to help build out some of these connections, because I think that a lot of the work that's happening in our communities goes under the radar, and people are doing some amazing work. So the more we kind of get other people to know who those folks are, where they should go, and kind of how to get involved would be great. So Amy, you said, got to keep an eye on our curriculum. If people are looking kind of up your neck of the woods to get involved, like where do you suggest, where would they go at this point? I know, right? It's a double-edged sword question, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, we do have there is a community Facebook page. It's called Palisades Jedi, and that's been up and running. It was running all summer. We actually had some picnics at the Lake Nakamixon over the summer. As like meet and greets and just trying to get to know people, and stuff like that. But as of right now, like I said, we have some things, and there's some projects in the works at the moment. And then when we get those up and running, I'm sure that it's going to be announced.
Excellent.
But for right now, I mean, definitely I can direct people to the Facebook Palisades Jedi page.
Fantastic. And, as soon as you get those projects get up and running, please, Kim Barbaro says, send them to me.
Oh, okay. There we go. We'll send them to Kim.
Okay, Kim, you let me know if you want to, Kim, I'll tell you what, if you want to shoot me an email with information on how to get in touch with you, is it ragingchickenpress@gmail.com? I'd love to pop that right in the show notes too as well. Ross, on your end, where should folks go to get involved at this point?
Well, you did mention the book project. That's the Pennridge Improvement Project in Facebook. They're doing a great job. And they are I think they're extending that beyond, because they've gotten all these books contributed. So they're going to be using that to stock, school libraries and things like that. I'm sitting here with a copy of Heather Has Two Mommies. It's great.
It's great. It's an awesome book. It's like, I mean, imagine like it's pretty radical message there though, Ross. I mean, come on, families, families are defined by loving each other. I mean, come on. I mean,
they got rid of it. And I really would like them to read it. I may read this to the school board. But you want to go, I think, on Facebook, to Pennridge Alliance for Responsible Leadership. We do a lot of talking in there. There's like 400 or 500 members there. So obviously that's a good, hotbed. But we're organizing through social media, through Facebook for the most part. So.
Excellent. And one of the things I want to say about, both of you plugged Facebook pages and both of you plugged kind of like some of the online stuff. I want to be clear, and I've mentioned this on the show 1,001 times, but I want to say it over and over again, is that the reason why I think the organizing that was going on in Palisades and Pennridge and Central Bucks and Pennsbury, a whole bunch of different districts across the state too as well, is like we're using social media in the way that social media should be used for organizing, right? Because you hear a lot of people like, I have to have these arguments with people all the time. So there's all these, people go on and they just want to have their Facebook conversations. It's like, no, you don't understand. The Facebook groups that I've been involved with, around here and throughout Bucks County, they're using that to set up meetings, to follow up things, to think about what to do next, to make sure that people are informed about things, and to get involved in talking about organizational strategy. So Want to be clear about that. So thank you both for all the work that you do. And, for more information, everybody, we're going to put some links in the show notes to make sure that you got places to go if you want to get involved in your community. Also, for all of you listening out there tonight, if you've got suggestions too as well about who we should have on the show, people doing cool organizing kind of in your community, doesn't just have to be in Pennridge and Palisades. We got folks in Central Bucks. We got folks anywhere without Bucks County. I want to continue to have these Bucks County roundtables as a way of helping, right, as being kind of an aggregator, if you will, of bringing some of folks together and kind of like having these conversations in a way that is and hopefully is going to amplify the work that's already going on. So thank you, Amy. Thank you for us for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having us.
Oh, you got it.
Yep.
This is Kevin Mahoney, editor and founder of Raging Chicken. I want to thank you all for tuning in tonight too as well. Special thanks to Amy and Ross. And yes, everybody, get involved and get involved soon, not right before the election. We can do this. See ya!